Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about how to print booklets. And when I say a booklet, I just mean any document with multiple pages, right, that are in sequence, okay, and that come from more than one sheet. Okay, this is a sheet, there's 4 pages on each sheet, that come from more than one sheet and the sheets are put together. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say a booklet. So if you're printing, an editorial spread and you're just running one copy, it's a booklet, right? In technical terms, it's a booklet because of just how it's set up, okay? The tricky thing is, depending on how you print it, depending on where you get it printed, you'll not only have to export differently, your file setup from the very beginning is gonna have to be different. And I know that's frustrating, okay, and I know you want me to just jump into InDesign and show you the different ways, but if I don't explain it to you, it's not really gonna mean anything, right? So you're gonna watch and you're gonna see, okay, well, which one should I use? But that's not really the point, right? The point is to equip you to understand these differences. Okay, so why are there differences? The main reason there's differences is something called imposition. Okay, imposition is the process of taking the digital file and setting it up so that each page in your digital file ends up on the right sheet and in the right place on that sheet. Remember, these are sheets. So that the document creates a booklet with accurate page numbers. So look, here's a booklet, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8. Okay, so the page numbers are in order. But if we look at the sheets, you can see that the sequence of the page numbers on the sheets may be different than what you expect, right? Like if this was in if this was in InDesign, right, and we were looking at spreads in InDesign, this would be page 2, and of course page 3 would be, right beside it. But instead, page 3 is over here, beside page 6, right? Which is a little bit confusing. And so that's why we need to prep the file so that this imposition process happens correctly. Okay, so that the pages are unscrambled and scrambled and re-scrambled so that they make a book, all right? So the first way we'll talk about setup is if you're going to a print shop, a commercial printer, someone with a large, whether it's process or digital offset CMYK printing, who's running hundreds or thousands of copies or tens of thousands of copies, right? This is if you're like sending it to a pro. Okay, they understand imposition. They'll do this for you. That's part of their job, okay? So when you set something up for them, you actually don't have to do much thinking at all. So you fire up InDesign and you set up facing pages. What does facing pages mean? It means that page 4 and 5 will be like right beside each other in the document, in the InDesign file, okay? It means 2 and 3 will be right beside each other in the document. It means you design, what you see on the design is what you will get. We're gonna use document bleed. Again, that's when you first set up your file. It's gonna say, do you want bleed? And you wanna put that bleed in. And when you export, you're gonna export a PDF as pages, okay? It's just a basic setting when you go to export. What pages means is that, the spreads will be like detached. Okay, so right now we have an attached spread, right? That 2 and 7 are attached. When you export as pages, it's gonna send out this page 2 all on its own, and then it's gonna send out page 7 all on its own, okay? And then the printer, like the commercial printer, the person you're hiring, will manually attach 2 and 7. Okay, they'll know, okay, 2 needs to go to 7. They know how the imposition works. They'll see page 3 and they have this as an individual page, and they have page 6 as an individual page, and they'll attach them so that it comes out properly, okay? So that's why usually you export as pages. Occasionally you'll have a commercial printer who wants a slightly different setup. The important thing is that you just ask, okay? You can say, hey, I'm gonna set this up as facing pages with document bleed, and I'm gonna export as pages. Does that work for you? And they'll give you a yes or a no. Okay, the next way you may print, and this is probably the way you're gonna print for school, is from your computer straight out of InDesign, okay? And you could do that to a home printer if you have a large printer, like something that does 12 by 18. Or you can print in the FB basement and print 11 by 17, okay? And this is really, really, really good for printing rough copies. Just, whipping out rough copies of your booklet real quick for review, for checking, layout, for checking scale, color densities, those kinds of things, okay? So coming right out of InDesign to a printer. If you're gonna do it this way, this is how you need to set the document up. With facing pages and using document bleed, just like for a commercial printer. Except when you export, you're not gonna export as pages. You're gonna export with the booklet maker, okay? Export as booklet or print as booklet. And that is imposition software built directly into InDesign. So again, imposing, remember, is figuring out this jumble, what page actually needs to be attached to what, right? What pages need to be on what sheet. The booklet maker will do that for you. It will get the page order correct, but you'll have to do some other settings like how big is the page? What orientation is the page? Which way should the document flip when you send it out to the printer? Okay, so we'll go over that in software. But that's how you do it from your computer out of InDesign. And then the last one, which is how you'll probably print your final copies for the assignment, right? Because these printers are not usually high quality, right? So if you want to print yours for the final submission for the assignment, you're probably going to want to go to some kind of office store, like a Staples or a FedEx or a UPS store, or there's a small print shop in the basement of FB. Okay, you can go there. Usually when you go to these places, you'll provide the employee with a USB key, or maybe you'll take the USB key and plug it in yourself to the machine and you'll print there. Now here's what's interesting about that. This employee does not know how to do imposition, and they don't have access to the booklet maker in InDesign because all you can supply them with is a PDF, right? And there's no InDesign on here, so all you can do is print from a PDF, which means you have to have this imposition set up, has to be ready. Your PDF basically has to look exactly like this. Okay, and that requires a completely different setup. We're not going to use facing pages, right? Because if we use facing pages, then page 2 and 3 are going to come out attached, right? It's going to come out like this with these guys stuck together, and we need to unstick them, right? So we're not going to use facing pages. We're going to manually add the bleed onto the page. Because remember, if you can envision InDesign, you can see that the bleed, right, is not literally printed onto this paper. The bleed is on the pasteboard, right? The bleed isn't part of this sheet. It's something that you need InDesign to see, okay? So that means we have to manually put it on the paper, put those crop marks and everything. Okay, so we're gonna manually do the bleed. We're not gonna use document bleed. We have to manually do the imposition in InDesign. So that means we're gonna have to actually scramble the pages up on our own, right? We're gonna have to know that 2 and 7 have to go beside each other. And when we export, we are gonna export as pages instead of spreads. But keep in mind, because we manually imposed it, a page is not actually a page. So right now, we've got 2 pages on here, but this is one like physical sheet, okay? So we're gonna have like one piece of paper, and we're manually putting the 2 here and 7 here. So we're not gonna export it as this, right? And then somehow stick 7 onto it, we're going to just export this as if it were a page, even though it's actually 2 pages. All right, so that's it. Remember these, this is the basics of how you'll do it. Now we're going to jump into software and go through the details of all of this, including the file setup.
Okay, so now that we have an overview and we understand why we need to set the file up differently for different ways of output, let's look at how to set the file up differently for those different ways of output. And we're going to start with preparing it for a commercial printer. What do I mean when I say a commercial printer? I mean like a big printing company like TPH or MGS or any printer who's capable of running high volume, dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of copies of a booklet. Okay, the real pros. What separates them is that they have, first of all, they could open your file in InDesign if you provide it to them. They have imposition software, which can take a PDF and break it up and put it together the way it needs to be put together. Let's look at how to set that up. File, new document, right? And that will bring up your new document dialog. I work in points and picas. Okay, 66p is 11 inches, 51 is 8.5. If you want to switch to inches, that's fine. We'll just switch to inches here. Okay. So we got 8.5 by 11. That's going to be our page size, right? The number of pages for your assignment, it's 8. So I'll just run off 8 pages. It could be any multiple of 4. Okay. So we're going to run 8 pages. And we want facing pages. Remember, facing pages is like if you have page 2 and page 3, they're kind of like they're together. Like when you look at them in InDesign, they're beside each other. That's what we mean by facing pages. And then we want bleed. We want to add the bleed here. So I'm just going to run with 1/4 inch bleed. Okay. And then everything else, margins, that's personal preference. That depends on your design, number of columns. Okay, so we don't necessarily care about that for these purposes. 8.5, 11, portrait, facing pages, 8 total pages, 1/4 inch bleed. Hit create. Okay, so if you don't see the pages panel, just go to view, window, pages, and turn that on, right? The pages are numbered here, but I want to see the page number here, okay, just because it'll make my life easier. So I'm just going to add, on my master page, I'm going to add a special character here. Insert special character, markers, current page number. Add that into a text frame, all right? So I'm just going to duplicate that out. And then now all my pages are automatically numbered. So you can see we've got facing pages, 2 and 3. They're facing each other, and they're kind of attached. Now, even though they're attached in the software, like they're beside each other, they're not actually attached. The software knows they're different pages. Okay, it has just positioned them facing each other. And honestly, you could design in this, and you don't have to do anything special from here on in. Just design as normal. I'm gonna add a shape down here that bleeds, just so we can see what bleed looks like. And I'll add one over here. All right, so let's say you're done. You've got your document set up and you are ready to print. What do? You could package the file. Okay, so we go File, Package, and I'll do that right now. And just hit Package. We'll hit Package here. And publication must be saved. Okay, yeah, we'll save it now. I'll call it Test. And it's going to create a folder. Right? Okay. Let's look at what it created. It created this folder called Test Folder. And it's got my InDesign file, a copy of my InDesign file. It's got an IDML. Now this is just a markup file. It's kind of like really basic code version of your document. And this is used especially when there's compatibility issues. So if you're opening this in an older version and this file doesn't work, you can use this file. Then we've got a folder with document fonts. So, it made a copy of the fonts. And it also created this PDF. And now this PDF is not configured properly. Okay? So we're not going to use this. We don't want it. Why is it not configured properly? Well, for one, it has attached page 2 and 3. So this is called export as spreads. And we know that we can't have these attached because the printer can't detach them to reorder them, right? Page 2 and 3 should not be beside each other. So this actually, we don't really need. You could trash it or you could send it. It's up to you. Some printers will just say, send me this folder and I'll do all the work from there. Some printers want a PDF, okay? They don't want to mess with your InDesign file, because if something goes wrong, suppose for example, they open your InDesign file and you're using a copy of a font with the same name as a font they have installed. It's going to load the one they have installed and it's going to be slightly different. So like there are so many different copies of Helvetica and Frutiger and Clarendon and all these super common fonts. They may have the one from ITC and you may have the one from Monotype, and it causes a problem, right? So sometimes printers don't want this. They say, no, give me a PDF because I know the PDF is like, let's say, reliable, or it's going to preserve your design more precisely. So how do we do that? File, export. Okay, and we'll name it something. I'm going to call it commercial-pages because this is like the export for a commercial printer, and we're going to use it export as pages. So we'll hit save, and it's going to ask me some questions here. The most important thing is that we export as pages. Remember we saw before it was in spreads, page 2 and 3 were attached. We don't want 2 and 3 attached because we know the printer has to detach them, rearrange them, and then stick them back together. That's in position. So we'll click pages. And then we'll go to marks and bleeds. And we're going to say, give me crop marks. And use the document bleed settings. These are the document bleed settings, this red line. The one that we set up when we created the document. Okay? And we'll just press export. And here's commercial pages. Okay, and you can see it's in pages, right? So the printer can impose things, right? And fix them, make them work. You can see that we've got our full bleed here. And then over here, because this is the inside margin, it does not bleed. It bleeds on the bottom, but not on the side. All right, so this is what most printers are going to need. Every printer is different. Okay, every printer is different. So ultimately you'll want to check with them, but 9 times out of 10, they're going to want something like this. Okay? Now, obviously, if we look at our next style of printing, which is if you are sending it from your computer straight to a printer, you're in InDesign and you want to send it to a printer at school or a printer at home, you can't do this because it's literally just going to come out page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and you won't have a booklet. You'll just have, a bunch of pages. So for that, we need to use something called the booklet printer directly from InDesign to a desktop printer or a small office printer. This is an ideal method to have knowledge of because, if you work in an office and you're the graphic designer who has to send something out to the printer, you don't want to place the order for thousands of copies and find out there's some kind of mistake that is something you did wrong, but when you set it up wrong. So you want to print a copy off and review it and check it out, and you want to show it to your boss, and you want to get approval on an at scale, 100% size booklet, and you want to make sure everything lines up. So you have to print a copy off in the office. So this is a great tool to do that because it will happen real quick. And the beautiful part is you can use the exact same file setup that you're sending to the printer. You don't have to do anything different. So I'm going to show you how to do that, but the catch is you have to be plugged into a printer. If you're not plugged into a printer, I'll show you how to trick Apple into thinking you are. I'm sorry if you're on Windows, I don't know how to do this, but I'll show you how to do it on Apple. So first thing you want to do is go to System Preferences and find Printers and Scanners. And then we're going to add a printer. Click on the globe, and the address is going to be whatever you want to make up that is easy for you to identify. So I'll just call it booklet lesson, okay? And the location is just nothing. And then we want to choose generic PCL printer, okay? And we're going to hit add. Now it's going to say, hey, we can't find this printer, which is not a surprise. The printer doesn't exist. We just want to get one in the system so that we could select it and pretend like we're going to print from it, okay? So we'll hit continue. And the last thing we need to do is check duplexer. Okay, duplexer means it prints on both sides. A duplexing printer is a printer that prints on both sides, which we need. So we're going to say, yeah, this is a duplexing printer. Cool. If you can, at this point in time, set the default paper size to oversized tabloid, which is 12 by 18, please do so at this point in time. Not everyone will be able to, but if you can, this is the best time to do it. Cool. And now look, we've got our fake printer in here. Amazing. So with our file open, we'll go File, Print Booklet. Okay. And we need to tell it which printer to print from. So we'll go Print Settings. And you can see the printer right now, it says PostScript file. I don't know what it will default to on your computer. Mine says PostScript file. I'm going to choose Booklet Lesson. Okay. And it will probably default on your computer. It could vary, all right, but it will probably default to US letter on your printer. And this will probably default to upper left. All right, so we'll hit OK. And let's go through these settings just to know what they are. Print preset, this is if you want to save a preset. So say you set this up, you choose a printer, you choose a paper size, you choose an output mode, a color mode, and that's what you want to use every time because like you're always printing off the same printer using the same settings. You can save them so that you're not having to do this every single time, which is really handy. Printer is the one we've just chosen. We want all pages. 2-up saddle stitch, that's the basic version that, you know, of the example I showed you with my hands, like at the beginning of this video. Creep, this is something that happens if you have a lot of pages, which we don't, so don't worry about it. Let's hit preview. Okay, so we can see that, you know, some things are good. Okay, one thing's working for us, which is that the blue number, which is the sequential page in the booklet, is lining up with the document page, right? So page 2 is definitely going to end up on page 2. That's good news. That's what we want to hear. So that's good. But then we have this red area, and that's just telling us, hey, the paper isn't big enough. All right. If you don't have the red paper, the red area, it means that your default chose a larger paper size, which is good. But I'm trying to go through all of the possible problems people could encounter with this one video. So suppose you have that. We're going to go to Print Settings. We're going to go to Setup. And we're going to pick a paper size. So tabloid actually isn't big enough. We need bigger than tabloid. We need 12 by 18. If you don't see 12 by 18, you need to manually add it. So we can go to Page Setup, And you can see if you have it here. We don't. Okay, we don't have it here. So we got to make one. How can we make one? Manage custom sizes. Okay. Maybe we can. Oh, maybe I can add this one. 18 by 12. So this is one I must have made before. 18 by 12 is 457 millimeters by 305 millimeters. So you would hit plus, and then you would write, what did I say it was? 457 by 305. 457 millimeters by 305 millimeters. And then these margins, top, bottom, left, this is the margin that the printer can reach. It's the extreme that the printer can reach. So I'm just going to set it at 5 millimeter, which is a guess because it's different for every single printer. And I'll rename this one. I'll call it 18 by 12 booklet. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK. And for whatever reason, it wants this to be called other. Even though I manually named it, fine, I'll click other. Okay, cool, other. Okay. And now look, we've got a width here, 17.9921, height 12.0079 inches. That's unfortunate. I don't know why it won't let me use inches. What happens if I wrote 18 inches? No, it defaults to millimeter. So let's just go with that. Fortunately, I hit OK. So I was definitely not okay with that funny decimal thing happening, and I remembered how to fix it. It's not hard. So get your system preferences up. Go to language and region, and then you're going to go to is it advanced? And then right here, set your measurement units to US. Set them to US, all right? And then we'll go OK. And now it's the exact same thing. Go back to printing your booklet, go back to your print settings, go back to page setup, and here we go. Everything's in inches now. So if we go manage custom sizes, look, everything is in inches now. So I'm actually going to delete all of these while I'm here. I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to call it 12 by 18, and it's actually going to be 12 by 18. I'm also going to delete all of these. Cool. So there we go. And now we've got other 12 by 18. And we don't have to worry about the madness. And here we go. Perfect 12 by 18. Sorry. Thanks for the detour. Back to our scheduled programming. All right, let's hit OK. So this is looking better. Look, our red area is gone because, you know, it's good. We have the right paper. But you can see that it's not really centered. Like, see how it's trying to start printing with these crop marks right touching the edge? We know that printers cannot print to the edge. That's the whole reason we have bleed. So we got to fix that. We'll go back to print settings, setup, and we're going to center this. Okay. See that? We're all set. We're centered. Good. Cool. At this point, you should be able to send this to print. If I click print right now, nothing will happen. It will just say cannot find printer because it can't find the printer. One problem you may encounter is that you print this and some of these pages come out upside down. And that's because sometimes it's flipping on the short edge and sometimes it's flipping on the long edge. And if you don't understand the problem with that, just pick up a book right now. Okay, pick up a book and open the book so that it's in spreads. Okay, and flip the long edge away from you and you'll see it's upside down. And then flip the short edge and you'll see it's not upside down. That's all I can tell you. If you can't do that, then you may not understand it. That's what's going on. So we can manually fix that as well. We'll go to print settings. We're going to go to printer. And we're going to find some kind of setting here that makes it print, first of all, two-sided. Okay, we need to print two-sided. And we want to choose between long edge or short edge. We probably want short edge. But, you're just going to have to try and find out. Every single printer is different. Every single one of you will have slightly different settings. That's just life. Like, they're all a little bit different. It depends on how you've oriented the paper. Lots of things can change this. So I'm sorry about that. But that's just it. That's just how it goes. So that will help you. Other things, hopefully you have the paper in here. If your printer supports 8.5/11, it should come up automatically. Sorry, if your printer supports 18/12, it should come up automatically, which is good news. Sometimes it's called super tabloid, or sometimes it's called oversized tabloid, or sometimes it's called tabloid large, just in case you were wondering. Another thing you might see is that sometimes there's something called ledger, which is super confusing. Ledger is the exact same size as tabloid. It's just tabloid is portrait, and ledger is landscape. Okay, so sorry, that's just something. But that's it. At this point, you should have everything you need to know to set this up. It's not simple. I can't just give you a straight line to the answer because there are no straight lines to the answer. All the equipment is different. Okay? So you would just hit print and then you'd be done. All right? Okay, so now that we've learned how to print directly from InDesign to, your home printer, a school printer that you can plug into with InDesign, or maybe you can open your InDesign file on another computer that's hooked up to a school computer. You have to learn how to create a PDF that can go anywhere, get printed by anyone, whether it's Staples or FedEx or the print shop in FB102, reliably, because these people don't always have access to InDesign. They won't have access to InDesign. You won't be able to hook your computer up and print from InDesign. Likely you won't be able to. So we need to hand someone a PDF that we know is going to come out a booklet. Okay, and that's going to take some work on our part. Okay, so let's get started with that. We're going to need a new document. All right, and we're going to want that document to be 18/12. Why 18/12? Because we want 8.5/11 pages, 2 stuck together, which makes 11/17. And then we want bleed coming out the sides so that we can trim it down, which means the actual piece of paper has to be bigger. We want it to be landscape. We want only 4 pages because remember, we're going to impose these spreads manually, which means there's 2 pages per spread. So InDesign thinks they're pages, but they're actually spreads, so we need half as many. We do not need facing pages. We're going to manually make that, so we don't need InDesign to do it. And we also don't need bleed. So 0 inches of bleed, because we are manually going to do bleed. Now, we want 2 columns with 0 gutter. Why? Because these columns are going to mimic our pages. Right? These columns are going to mimic our pages. So that will just make it easier for us to lay out our design. And for margins, I'm going to use 1/2 inch. Why? Because if we have 12/18 and we subtract 1/2 inch from each side, that's a total of 1 inch on each side. That leaves us with 11/17, which means our visible, like the area inside that pink margin line, will be our actual workspace. I'm going to click create and you'll understand right away. See that? So these pages, these pink lines here, these are the actual pages, like page 1, page 2, page 3 of our document. And this white area here is our bleed area. All right. And we're going to manually impose this. So we're basically going to create in InDesign what InDesign spits out for the printer, but pre-imposed. Right. So you see how this page, it's a page and it's got the bleed right on it. We're going to make that right here in InDesign. And I'm going to make it on the parent page. The parent page, this thing right here. If you don't see these pages, window, pages, then double click on a parent. And this is where we're going to draw our crop marks. Turn on your grids, and we're going to draw a line. And I want to make that line a 1/4 point thick, black. And I want the length to be 0.25 inch. So if you just type in 0.25 in and press enter, you're going to be all set. Now I want to position it, and I want to position it roughly how a crop mark should be positioned, which is, at the edge of the document and then backed off a 1/4 inch. But I want to get it perfect. I want it to be perfect. So what I'll do is I'll click on this little arrow, this little box here, and I'll click this. And that means I'm aligning it to this point right here. It means that's what I'm moving when I move things. And where am I going to place it? I'm going to place it 0.375 in the X direction. So that's a 1/4 inch, 3/4 of an inch from the edge, and 1/2 inch down. Now I'm going to duplicate it, Command C, Command V, or Option drag. I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to punch in the numbers again. I want it 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch. So now I am perfectly positioned. And I'm going to select these and group them, Command G, and copy it. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom here. Command or Control V, paste, rotate. And then I want to position this corner directly onto this corner. So again, I'm going to use these tools, but first I'm going to tell it to target this corner of my group, I guess. So this corner here means I'm placing this corner. So now when I type in 0.5, it's perfect, and 11.5, it's perfect. All right, cool. Copy that. Go to the other side of my document. Rotate. All right, okay, it's snapped in, so I'm good. I don't have to change anything. Come up here, rotate, and it's snapped in. But otherwise, I would use these values and I would place it in place. All right, so my my parent page is all set up. And I'm going to turn off my grid, Command or Control, exclamation. And I'm going to check all my pages. They're all set up. Okay, cool. So good. So this is basically, front and back of my 2 sheets that the booklet is made out of. Now I'm going to create a new layer here. And I'm just going to call that layer page numbers. And I'm going to manually add the page numbers in because I need to set up the manual imposition. Okay, so this is page 1. And if this was the cover of a book, page 1 is the front cover. If I put the book upside down and open it, right, I know that 8 is going to be on the other side, right? Simple enough. It's just a book placed upside down on a table. It's going to be 1 will be connected to the back, which is 8. Now, if I were to like take this page and like flip it, well, let me draw a shape to illustrate that a little bit better. So we got this here. And I have this. If I were to grab this and flip it, turn this page over, right? It's like I'm turning the page over. This would be now like looking through it, right? So it's almost like I'm holding the page up to the light backwards. What's on the other side of page 1? Well, it has to be page 2. And what's on the other side of page 8? Well, it has to be page 7. So I know this is page 2 and I know this is page 7. I also know that the middle of my book, right, is going to be, those pages will be connected because it's the very middle of the book, right? Those pages are just connected. They're the perfect spread. And I can use the same logic I used before, right? Just like the back of page 1 must be page 2, and the back of page 8 must be page 7. The back of page 5 must be page 6, and the back of page 4 over here must be page 3. Okay? So now we've done it. We've done manual imposition. And obviously you would never want to do this for a big document, right? Like 100-page document. This would be a nightmare. You wouldn't do that. You would need to use the booklet printer. Okay? But you don't always have access to the booklet printer because you can't always plug your computer directly in to, a printer that will accept the file from InDesign. So now you're saying, well, great, but Eric, I don't want to design this way. I don't want to be working on a 2-3 spread and be designing here and then having to go over here. And I don't blame you. So here's what I suggest you do. Design everything here like you normally would. This is the same setup we used that when we configured the file for sending to a professional printer. Export it exactly like you would for a professional printer, and then manually place it into here. And now you export this as a PDF. So I'll show you what I mean by that right now. First, I'm going to save this just in case something happens. I'll call it imposed spreads. Okay. Now I'm going to say file, place. And make sure you turn on show import options. And I want to import my pages, commercial pages PDF. Right? This is the one I set up to send to a commercial printer. Open. And I want all pages. Okay, we're going to hit OK. And I'm going to place this, get my layers panel open. I don't want to place this on my page number page. I want to place it on layer 1. Okay, so I got page 1 here. I'm going to put that on. And I'm just using my arrow key. No, we're not going to do that yet. Now I got page 2. And I'm going to place that. Now I got page 3. And I can place that. Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is this kind of annoying part. I have to line up my crop marks now, right? So I'll just line up my crop marks. And then once I line up the crop marks, I need to adjust the inside margin to match. So the reason I need to adjust my inside margin is because when we exported this as pages, you can see it added the bleed on all 4 sides of the pages. But I don't actually want this, right? I don't want page 1 to bleed onto page 8. So we'll just adjust that. What really matters is that you line up your crop marks. And I'm just using my arrow keys to do it. Then I am snugging up my inside margins to that line. Okay, and this really won't take you long. Use the arrow keys. Slow is fast, right? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So we'll just set all these up. Just lining on everything, getting everything set up to go. Okay, cool. Now, you know what? I don't need my page numbers anymore. So I'm going to hide them. And there we go. My document is fully in post. We are ready to export this. So if I say Command E and I export this as in post spreads, we'll hit save. And this is a little confusing maybe, but export as, you might say, oh, I want to export as spreads, but you don't. Because we already put the spreads onto pages. So this is a little confusing. We took our pages and we put them onto one, like, let's say sheet of paper, right? Because what this means in this case, pages means more like the sheet of paper. So we want pages. We put our spreads onto one page. And the other thing is we do not want any crop marks because we already drew them. We already drew the crop marks on. And in this case, you know, my document bleed settings are 0 and that's what I want. So we could use document bleed settings. It doesn't really matter as long as they're 0. Whether you use them or not, just they should be 0. Okay, and now we can export. And here we go. You've got your imposed spreads with beautiful crop marks, and you're going to make a lovely booklet. And you could take this to anyone, anywhere, and it will print beautifully. The only thing that might happen is that sometimes the printer flips it the wrong way. Okay, so what I mean by that is, if you can imagine, if I take this to 7 and I flip this along the short edge, this edge here, okay, I'm going to see 8 and 1 on the other side, right? If I take this and I flip it on the long side, so if I grab the bottom of this and flip it over, take the bottom of this sheet and flip it towards the top, then I'm going to get 8-1, but they're going to be upside down. So if you're getting this problem where the numbers are upside down, you need to tell your printer to flip on the short side. So I'll click two-sided here. Let's see if we can find those options here. See how it defaulted to long edge binding? That's bad. It's going to try to flip it on the long edge. We don't want to do that. We want to flip it on the short edge. Okay. And if the person who's printing this can't figure that out, one thing you could do is manually rotate this page. So that way, if it goes to the printer upside down, right, it gets sent to the printer upside down, and then the printer flips it upside down again, it will now be right side up. So I've got this one correct, this one's upside down, this one's right side up, this one's upside down. That could fix your problem. Okay, so these are just things that you have to learn as a designer and know better than the printer. The very last thing I'll go over, you're probably thinking, well, Eric, I don't want to do this every single time I make a change, right? Like I don't want to have to do this again and again and place this every time. You only have to do it once. You only have to do it once. Look, if I have this file here and I change something about it. So let's say I want to put a blue circle on page 3. So I draw a blue circle on page 3. And I export it, Command E, and I give it the same name as I did before. It's that change is gonna get picked up over in my imposed spreads, because my imposed spreads are just looking for a file called commercialpages.pdf and loading it up. It's no different than if you place an image in InDesign and then change the image. It's always going to appear as long as you don't change the file name. So we'll save this. And I want to use all the same settings, right? Everything's fine. Use all those settings. And we're going to go out here. And look, we've got this little like attention symbol. And that's telling us, hey, I think this file has changed, right? And it has. So we want to fire up the links panel to check that out. So here's the links panel. And if we right click, we have to expand, select it, right click or control click or command click, and choose update all instances of commercial pages.pdf. Okay. Where's page 3? Let's find it. Update. What just happened? What just happened? Let's take a look. Why did everything go all nimbly bimbly? Well, I don't know. So what I'm going to do is export it again. So look, here's what happened. It changed because I changed the settings, right? When I first exported this, I had crop marks turned on. Then I exported another file with crop marks turned off, and it remembered that crop marks were supposed to be off. And then when I exported this one, it put the crop marks back. So we gotta put them, it took them off. So we gotta put them back. Isn't this nice? So, okay, good. Let's update it again. Links. And now we're back in business. All right. Don't panic when, I'm happy this happened. Don't panic when InDesign does something strange. Think about the last thing you did and ask yourself if there's any possible way it could have affected things. Okay. And very often, that's why. This is one of the reasons that we like presets. So you could save a preset here. So let's do that actually. I'll show you how to do that while we're here. Go File, Export, and okay, test. Okay, and I'm gonna click Save Preset, and I might call this preset Pages for Printer. Okay, so now that's it. It's saved. Every single time I need to export pages for printer, I just click that, done. Okay, and then we could do this one, File, Export. Yep, good. Replace, sure. And I can save this preset as imposed PDF. We'll just call it, this is my imposed PDF settings. And remember, I got to turn crop marks off now. Everything else good, export. Okay, so now you have those settings. And if you save this as a template, so we'll do File, Save As, a template, you can use this every single time you need an 8-page document, right? So we'll save that as an 8-page document. All right. And all you would need to do is come to the link and say relink all instances and just pick a new, whatever new page you've created. And this imposition is always ready to go for you. So yes, these things are annoying, but there are workflows which can make them much less annoying. So I hope this was useful. You should try as soon as you can to figure this out. It just takes time. You'll get used to it, but it's also going to make you, like the hero, the day that you can do this and no one else can. So thanks for watching and have a nice day.